Welcome back to another episode of the Honda CRM 250 restoration. In this video I'm going to take the engine from like this flaky bad paint to new coat of gold high temperature paint. You start by getting everything out of the way, like the foot brake lever and the kickstart. To get the foot brake off, you just have to unclip that spring. Then you sand down the old paint to as smooth as you can using rough sandpaper, preferably a sander like this. I had this damage at the bottom of the engine, these scratches, so I used this rotary tool to grind them out to as smooth as I could. And then if it's a cold day, you have to warm the spray cans up by putting them in a jug of hot water, and also warm the cold metal engine up using a heat gun, getting it to a hot temperature, because if you don't, you'll have bad reactions with the paint hitting the cold surface. Cover everything that you don't want to get paint on with masking tape and newspaper. Then degrease everything with isopropyl alcohol. This is a light dusting of this gold high temperature paint from Amazon. It was the perfect colour and really good quality. You need to just shake it really well though, as it's metallic, and you need a lot of it to get coverage. You start by getting all of the nooks and crannies and the edges and in all of the gaps, and then once you've done that, you then spray the surface that you want to look the best, like the big flat surface where the Honda sign is. You have to give it light coats one at a time and let it dry in between, because you can't give it a heavy thick coat and try and cover it all right in the beginning, otherwise it will just flake off when it's dry. You have to give it a dusting first, then wait for that to dry, then give it another coat. You can use a heat gun in between coats to make it dry quicker and easier. This was after 3 or 4 coats. If there's any metal showing through behind the paint, you just have to keep going and give it more coats. This is the left side of the engine. These parts are plastic and they unbolt, which is so much easier for spraying because you can take them in and wash them in very liquid and take them wherever you want to spray. First I'm going to give them a coat of primer. I didn't do that with the other side of the metal engine because that was high temperature paint. So you don't put primer on before, otherwise the primer would get too hot. And I've sanded down these parts using wet and dry sandpaper, 800 grit usually. The same with all spraying with primer, you just start with a light dusting and you don't have to get full coverage with primer, it's just enough just to help the base coat stick. This is the headlight fairing that I've already resprayed in white, and now I'm going to give it a final coat of clear lacquer to protect the white paint, make it less likely to chip and scratch. Again, you get all the edges and nooks and crannies first, and then cover the surface that you want to look the best. It's a good idea to test spray can first on the newspaper to make sure it's coming out correctly. If it's not, shake it up more. These plastic parts obviously didn't need to be sprayed in high temperature paint like this, but I wanted it to match the other side of the engine, the metal side, which does get hot. In between each coat you need to leave about 10 minutes for it to dry. Obviously if it's a hot day and it's in the sun, then it's less than that, or if it's a cold day it will be much longer. The more time you spend on preparation of everything, like the sanding down, the masking up, and then giving yourself more time between coats for it to dry, the better the end result will be. I think this headlight fairing was originally black or red. The previous owner had sprayed it white, but done a really appalling job of it. He'd not given it full coverage, it was really rough like sandpaper, so I've resprayed it in white. I could have bought a whole new fairing already in white plastic. Where's the fun in that? Plus I already knew this one fits. This is a cordless heat gun to help it dry better and to make sure I don't get runs or anything like that. Here's the finished plastic pieces. I'm using new stainless steel bolts to put it back on, because the old ones were completely rusty, and dipping them in copper grease. Here's the finished results. I really like the colour. It turned out really well and looks a lot smarter. The paint will stay soft and not fully dried for a few days, so be really careful with new fresh paint. It won't be fully hard for a few days.